Part 278. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2778. After hesitating for 2 days, the emperor picked up the people in the court and found that no one was more suitable for this position than Niu Shishi, so he issued the appointment letter. The appointment letter was written by Bai Shan, and it was sent to the provincial government after reviewing it. Niu Shishi jumped to the 4th level to become the protector of Andong's government, and he didn't know that it was Bai Shan who recommended him until the edict came to him. After thinking about it, he picked out a box from the loot he had collected, and quietly had it delivered to Zhou Man. Man Bao was very happy to receive this box of trophies, and immediately excited people to carry it to the person who was going to share it with the medical bill. As a result, when I went out, I realized that this thing was not for medical bills, but for her alone. But it wasn't because of her excellent medical skills that she lived, but because Bai Shan recommended the history of bullthorns. Man Bao scratched his head, and then let someone carry the box back again. When Bai Shan came back, he asked him, "Do you want to accept this gift?" "No," Bai Shan said, "this is a bribe, so I can't open it up, and I recommend Niu Shishi in front of His Majesty because he is indeed suitable, not for this box of gifts." Man Bao let people carry the things back quietly again. But at this moment, everyone lives in the front and left courtyards of the inner city. This kind of thing can't be hidden from the emperor, certainly not from the neighbors on the left and right, and even more from Yin Li. Yin Li knew it, and so did the emperor. He smiled slightly and said, "Bai Shan is a talent that can be created. The biggest gain of this expedition is not in Liaodong, but in cultivating a Bai Shan for the court, knowing the prefect of Yingzhou, and Shuigui. A stalwart." Yin Li smiled and said, "Congratulations to your majesty for obtaining a good minister and a beautiful general." After arranging the local affairs, the emperor asked Qintian to supervise the auspicious day for the teacher to return to the dynasty, and everyone packed up and went back to Beijing. The emperor brought all the members of the Gao clan with him. In addition, he also named many old officials of Goguryeo and asked them to pack their luggage and go to the Central Plains together. They will be scattered and arranged in the Jiangnan area, and the Liaodong area is also vast and sparsely populated. The emperor has already decided that when he returns, he will select some refugees or landless tenant farmers from the Central Plains area to migrate. Although there are many Han people in the Liaodong area, there are more people in Lai and Fuyu, so they need more Han people. Lai and Fuyu people also need to learn farming, weaving and other skills from the Han people. As long as they all learn Chinese and read the classics of the Central Plains, one day they will listen to the unified rule of the Central Plains. King Guang and King Goguryeo did not expect such a result, and expressed their opposition strongly, but the emperor and the generals and officials of Jin state regarded their words as fart. Now they have no military power and left Goguryeo, and even their ancestors have accumulated to this day. Their prestige and connections have all disappeared. How can they resist? On the other hand, the words of the second high school prince were still useful, and he also expressed his objection. The emperor would be much kinder to the second-year high school prince, and said to him gently, "I think that if your parents and relatives are in Chang'an, it will be more convenient for you to perform filial piety in the future. When you return to the capital, you will still lead troops outside, with your parents around, you can also have no worries." The second prince of the high school was stunned for a moment after hearing the words, then bowed his head and said yes. Man Bao waited for him to leave before entering the main hall to ask the emperor for a pulse of peace. That's what the emperor said. She didn't know whether the second-year high school prince believed it or not. She didn't believe it anyway. When the king of Goguryeo was the king, even the second-year high school prince could betray him, let alone now. If he really suspected that the emperor wanted to detain King Guang and King Goguryeo as his weakness, he would do nothing and let the emperor think so. However, the emperor and Zhou Man obviously knew what the second high school prince was, even though he showed a painful expression. The emperor was a little tired, so he closed his eyes and gave Zhou maniples. Manbao listened to it for a long time, and then learned about the emperor's recent diet and daily life with Guzhong, and said to the emperor, "Your Majesty should think less and rest more, you are overworked." The emperor opened his eyes to look at her. "I also want to rest, Neil has no time." Manbao said, "Just leave things to others to do. I see that Zhao Qiuagong has been very busy recently." The emperor couldn't help laughing. "How did Duke Zhao provoke you? Are you here to sue him for making trouble?" Manbao didn't answer. He really wanted to say that Zhao Qiuagong was wrong. It seemed that she was so stingy and she would pay her back. She changed the subject and said, "Your Majesty, General Qi Bai's wound is scabbed over." The emperor looked relieved, turned his head and said to Guzhong, "Write down this matter, I want to visit General Qi Bai before dinner in the evening." "Yes." Manbao didn't prescribe medicine to the emperor, it was a 3-point poison, and the most important thing for overworked was rest. So Manbao gave 2 prescriptions for medicinal food, and then gave the emperor the prescription to sleep more and think less and left. The emperor only looked at the prescription and then withdrew his gaze. He also wanted to sleep and think less, but he also wanted to have this condition. There are still too few people he has brought out. There are still many things in the inner city that have not been dealt with. Now they are already preparing for the return of the teacher. Where is the extra time? Recently, even if it is convenient, I have to seize the time and take the opportunity to go out. The emperor thought about it carefully and felt that his life was too hard, so he drew a blank piece of paper and came over to write a letter to the prince to complain. The main reason is to complain that there are too many things now, and he doesn't even have time to sleep. He warned him not to think that the emperor is so easy to be. However, the emperor is also a human being, and he can't be bothered all the time. I just hope that my son will not have to go to the east and west like me in the future, but will directly sit on the dragon chair and wait for the quartet to come to court. The emperor finished writing with relish and felt much better, so he continued to nod his head to read the book. Qin Tianjian counted a good day, and everyone set off to return to the DPRK. When they arrived in Yuzhou, the emperor sent people to send most of the Gao royal family, old officials of Goguryeo and their families to Jiangnan, and they took the rest to Chang'an. The prince went to Taiyuan to pick up the emperor in advance. He set off after receiving the emperor's letter, and despite the advice of Lord Wei and others, he made it all the way to Taiyuan. If he hadn't been blocked from left to right, he would have wanted to go to Yuzhou to pick him up. It was the first time he heard his father say that being an emperor was hard, and he felt very happy. He felt that the relationship between him and his father was indeed much better when the third child was not around. When she went there, Manbao was riding a horse, but when she came back, she was in the car most of the time. First, it was cold outside, and second, she was so sleepy and wanted to sleep, so she stayed in the car the whole time. Before the army arrived in Taiyuan, soldiers rushed to report, "Your Majesty, His Royal Highness the Prince welcomes His Majesty into the city at the Taiyuan city gate." The emperor closed the whistleblower document in his hand, nodded slightly, and said, "Okay, let's go on the order and move forward at full speed. The Taiyuan city gate is not far ahead." "Yes. See you tomorrow." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2779. The prince did not come alone, he brought many people to greet the emperor. The father and son met successfully at the gate of Taiyuan city and entered Taiyuan city to rest together. The last time Manbao and the others were in Taiyuan, they passed by in a hurry, but this time they will stay here for an extra day, so they stayed here, and the 3 of them went to the street together. Lu Huan also invited Zhou Liru to play together. Bai Erlang wanted to bring back some souvenirs for Mingda, so he was very keen to visit the stalls and shops here. Manbao followed behind him with relish. The most representative of the local products is eating. So in the end, Bai Erlang didn't buy anything good, but Man Bao and Bai Shan followed behind and ate a lot of food. Bai Erlang looked at the stomachs of the two and asked Bai Shan, "Your injury healed so quickly?" Bai Shan said without changing his face, "I'm young, I'm in good health, and I'm recovering quickly." At this time, Chi Bai He Li was also talking to Ashina and the others. "I never felt older, but after this battle, I do feel older, and I can't compare to the younger ones." Then a general smiled and said, "Why did General Kibi say this? You are a famous general in my Jin dynasty." Chi Bai He Li shook his head and said, "Let's not talk about Shuigui, the upstart in the army, but Bai Shan, a civil servant, who was hit by 2 arrows and recovered faster than me." Then the general said quickly, "He is young, why should the general compare with him?" As soon as these words came out, everyone fell silent, and even the always prudent General Ashina couldn't help but glance at each other. Only then did the general react, touched his nose and said, "I didn't mean that. I mean, after all, Lord Bai is younger than us, and I heard that he has not yet reached the championship. The young man of this age has the fastest recovery. I think back then when I was in my teens or 20s, I was slashed in the chest, and I didn't have the medical skills of Imperial Dr. Zhou. I just used some medicine for gold sores, and I was able to fight the enemy in less than 10 days. At that time, the knife saw the bone. What's the matter? I hit the arrow in the chest, folded the arrow feather, and in a moment I can turn around and kill the enemy again." So General Kibi He Li's emotion turned into a memory of the past and showing off for the generals. As a general, every scar on his body, as long as that battle is not lost, is a performance of merit. General Chi Bai He Li pouted, turned his head and pulled Ashina, who was not involved in the topic, and said, "I don't know who I've heard before. Bai Shan's birthday has passed, he has already reached the crown, what do you think I should give him? Is the crown gift good?" Some officials from the capital were curious, how did General Chi Bai think of giving gifts to Lord Bai? He accompanied the prince to meet the emperor, and did not know what was going on the battlefield. Chi Bai He Li sighed and said, "Thanks to Lord Bai this time, if he hadn't pulled me, those 2 arrows would have shot me. This is a lifesaver." Ashina said, "Master Bai also said that you have a life-saving grace for him. I think the 2 of you's kindness can be offset by each other." Chi Bai He Li. That being said, General Chi Bai He Li still paid attention to all kinds of things, thinking that it would be better to give Bai Shan something to make an inauguration ceremony. If there is something good in the top, it will be worse in the bottom, so General Chi Bai's men searched for good things everywhere. As soon as they heard that there was something good, they immediately took the money to see it, and bought it and gave it to General Chi Bai when it was suitable. With such a big fanfare, both the emperor and the prince knew it. The emperor called him to ask, "What are you doing? The good reputation you have built in the eastern expedition will make you lose all." When General Chi Bai heard this, he immediately said, "If the minister has paid, the merchants will always sell the things. If the minister likes it, it is not forcibly taken, nor is it forced to buy it, why not?" The emperor asked angrily, "Where did you get so much money?" General Kibi did not speak. The emperor said earnestly, "You are fighting for the country. I don't want to be too strict, but you can't reveal too much. After you go back, Yashitai and Wei Ji and others are still waiting to find the wrong place." Among the people the emperor took out this time, except for General Ashina, who gave all the spoils he had collected to the emperor, who did not bring the spoils of war with his subordinates. Including Zhao Qiagong, he himself divided a lot, and at the same time quietly sent some to the emperor, and then gave some medical bills. The loot that was collected was basically divided, and not many can be returned to the treasury. The emperor himself has led troops to fight in the past, and he naturally knows that as a general, he also has to support the soldiers under him, so he turns a blind eye to this kind of thing. Anyway, everyone is fair, and things are not taken by himself. will be distributed to their subordinates, one level down, to ordinary soldiers. They can also get some things. This kind of loot is usually piled up in the warehouse for 2 or 3 years, and then taken out for use after the wind has passed. By that time, the people at the censor's desk would have forgotten about it. But Kibihili is better. He has not returned to the capital and started to take out and change things. Do you think the movement is not big enough? It is the fault of the so-called son that the father does not teach the father, and the subject is unworthy. Naturally, it is also the fault of the king. After returning, Wei Ji will definitely scold him like this. So in order not to be scolded, the emperor could only stop Qi behavior. He said, "Is there any good things in the capital? Do you have to buy them on the way back to the DPRK? Qi, I just want to prepare a crown gift for Lord Bai." The emperor was startled. Has Bai Shan reached the crown? He looked at Gu Zhong. Gu Zhong bent over and smiled. Yes, Lord Luzhou and his concubine even gave Lord Bai a simple birthday. The emperor said, "The crown is a major event. Even if it is not good to hold the crown ceremony on the road, I have to do it again when I go back, right?" I remember that his husband gave him a call. Or Gu Zhong smiled and said, "Yes, I vaguely heard that it is called Supreme Shan." The emperor laughed and said happily, "It fits his name very well. I hope his character will always be like this in the future." Gu Zhong bowed his head and smiled and replied yes. After thinking about it, the emperor said, "It's useless for you to send him those gold, silver and precious stones. Look at the ones you want to collect, whether it's a treasure knife or a BMW, he's not a military general, and he doesn't care about these things. Some unique paintings to send him, that's what he likes." Qi stared, "Where can I find something like this? Merchants rarely have such things in their hands, and even if they do, they don't know if they are true or not, so he dare not buy them." The emperor smiled and said, "You are not stupid, so don't buy it on the road. What good things can you find on the march? When you return to the capital, you go to ask Kong Jiju, he will definitely know where there are good things. He'll be happy when you buy something to give him a second look." Qi rolled his eyes and whispered, "Your Majesty, I have no friendship with Kong Jiju. There is Ashina, you go to Ashina." Ashina has always liked to read after his surrender, so he often asked Kong Jiju for advice, and the two became friends after going back and forth, and there was some face there. See you at 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2780. So Qi and He Li went to find Ashina, and went all the way back to the capital. The emperor and the others went outside the capital in the evening, but instead of entering the city immediately, they were stationed outside the city. Early the next morning, when the supervisor of Qintian had calculated the auspiciousness, Wei Ji led the civil and military officials of the Manchu dynasty out of the city to meet the emperor. The emperor no longer rode in a chariot, but rode his own horse, leading the ministers and the imperial guards into the city. When they arrived at the gate of the city, Wei Ji and the officials knelt down to greet him, shouting "Long live!" When the emperor rode on the horse, he only felt that the sky was high and the sea was broad, and his mind was as open as the sky, and his pride was suddenly born. The ministers who followed behind the emperor on horseback also dismounted, leading more than 5,000 forbidden troops to kneel, echoing the 100 officials at the city gate, shouting "Long live!" Man Bao knelt on the ground, raised his head slightly and glanced at the emperor at the front, and a sense of pride rose up. She felt that she was very lucky, that she was fortunate to meet today, and she also had her own place among the 100 officials. Her eyes were bright, and she lowered her head to give a sincere kowtow to the emperor. The emperor raised his hand and said, "All the ministers flatten." The prince led the ministers on this side to get up, and Wei Ji on the opposite side led the officials to get up. Then everyone surrounded the emperor into the city, and felt the support and love of the people of the capital for them. Well, mainly to the emperor. As a fourth-rank official, Man Bao was fortunate to ride a horse not far behind the emperor, and also felt the surging love of the people. Zhou Lixia brought his younger brothers and sisters out, squeezed into the crowd, and shouted loudly to His Majesty the Emperor, and when he saw the little ant, he screamed, "Little ant, it's little ant, that's my little ant." He called again, "That's my little uncle." Both sides of the road were crowded with people, upstairs and even the trees were full of people, all eagerly following the emperor. The capital was busier than ever, comparable to the Chinese New Year. A group of girls huddled by the window of the restaurant and looked down. When Zhou Man passed by, there was an exclamation, 12 or 13-year-old girls, "You pushed me, I pushed you," and screamed, "See, look. Are you there yet? Is it Lord Zhou? It's Lord Zhou." She even looked up at me. God, God, she smiled at me. Nonsense, it's clearly aimed at me. Lord Zhou, Lord Zhou, look here. It's a crimson official uniform, and her face is so white and beautiful, I like it very much. I like it too. When I get home I want my mother to make me a crimson dress. That's an official robe, how can you wear it? It's about getting a similar style, not exactly the same, just look good. Yeah, I didn't expect women to look so good in official robes. When I go back, I want to try my brother's official robe. Your brother's official robe is green, doesn't it look good? Who said it's not good looking? I think it's pretty, but unfortunately I haven't seen Lord Zhou wearing a green official robe. There were also many women who brought their children to watch, pointing to the young and beautiful Bai Shan and saying to their sons, "Did you see it? If you study hard, you will be able to serve your majesty like them in the future." He pointed to Zhou Man and said to his daughter, "You also have to study hard and learn a skill, preferably medicine. Maybe you will be able to become an official in the future." The Anian family. Although he is not very hopeful, Zhou Man's achievements and the rise of the Zhou family still make many daughters in the family look forward to it. Man Bao withdrew his gaze, turned his head and said to the two servants of the Ministry of Labor who were riding alongside her, "I always feel that someone is calling me, but I didn't see any acquaintances at first glance." The two waiters were silent. Zhou Man rode in the middle, and they were on both sides, so they could hear more clearly, so they didn't want to pay attention to her at this time. Seeing that they were ignoring her, Man Bao could only look back regretfully. Yin Or was also sitting in the restaurant. He reserved a private room alone, and saw his little friends riding past him, the corner of his mouth slightly raised, very happy. Chang Xiao also said happily, "Young master, Master Bai, second young master and Miss Man have all returned safely." Yin He nodded, and when all the guards of the imperial army passed downstairs, he stood up and said, let's go home." Chang Xiao smiled and asked, "Master, do you want to go to Zhou's house later to see Master Bai and the others?" Yin He shook his head and said, "They just came back, not only to be rewarded for meritorious deeds, but also to see their relatives. We'll see you at the dinner party in a few days." The emperor must be happy that he got Liao Dong this time. When things settle down, there will definitely be a celebration feast in the palace, and we will see you then. The emperor led the ministers back to the palace, and first met the officials in the Taiji Hall, and everyone discussed the events of the past few months. Of course, today, the emperor's class is returning to the court, which is a big happy event. No one would be uncomfortable with the emperor at this time, so everyone said good things. The emperor also responded to the situation, and ordered the rewards that were drawn up on the road to be promulgated. Those who followed the Eastern expedition were given rewards, ranging from small rewards to things, to promotions, or even titles. Chi Bai He Li, Ashina and others have all been awarded titles, and at the same time they have moved to another place to continue to be generals, and by the way, they can govern the place and serve as the prefect. Zhao Qiagong and others also received rewards, and they were followed by Zhou Man. Bai Erlang was praised a lot, and then jumped from the 7th rank Hanlin to the 5th rank Hanlin, still cultivating and studying in the Hanlin Academy. Bai Shan's position has not changed, and he is still in the province of Zhongshu. Zhou Man's official position has not changed, but he has received a lot of rewards. In addition to some gold and silver property, his title has also been raised, and he has been promoted from the head of the town to the head of the county. Even the courtiers couldn't help but look sideways. This young couple was really interesting. They were promoted together, and even the titles were promoted together. Man Bao happily accepted the decree, and when the emperor sealed everyone, she left the hall. Bai Shan's official position was a little smaller than her, so he stood outside waiting for her. The couple went home happily under everyone's attention. Old Zhutu and the Qian family came to the capital after the autumn. They also went to the street to watch the fun early this morning. In the crowd, they saw Man Bao, who was riding a horse on the upper reaches of Beguin, and old Zhutu burst into tears. Just come down. Even Qian's eyes were filled with tears. For the first time, he truly felt that their family's full treasures were really promising. Even if she is not a boy, she can be an official Yinzi and honor her ancestors. So Man Bao and the others were pulled by old Zhutu and Qian Shi as soon as they came back. Madame Lu couldn't hold back her emotions, she stepped forward to hold Bai Shan, checked everyone, and she was relieved to make sure that he was also fine. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2781. Bai Shan and Man Bao kept it a secret. No one told the family about Bai Shan's injury, not even the 2 guards and De Ji who followed Bai Shan. Of course, they didn't say it was because Bai Shan had told him. The current Bai Shan is no longer the Bai Shan of the past. In the past, they would have listened to the old lady, but now that Bai Shan has married and started a family and is the head of the Bai family, they will naturally listen to Bai Shan, even if they were sent by the old lady to take care of Bai Shan. Daji originally wanted to tell the old lady, but thinking that the young master's injury was a little strange, he also pressed down and said nothing. In the evening, when the family sat together, the old Zhutu was like listening to the scriptures, and it took a long while to find his own voice. Does that mean that Man Bao is now the county head? Man Bao nodded. Old Zhou swallowed his saliva. He didn't know much about the township owner, but he knew the county owner. According to legend, isn't the county owner the daughter of the prince? Can the daughter outside really be named the county head? Man Bao pointed at himself and said, "Dad, look at me, I'll do it." She said, "Actually, I don't really want to be named the county head. How good is it to be named the county magistrate? The county owner cannot be hereditary, and the county magistrate may still be hereditary. Although it is a downgrade, it is better than her generation." Hearing this, everyone's gazes towards Bai Shan also brightened. But Mrs. Lu asked Bai Shan curiously, "You are just a middle-class scholar, who went to organize government affairs for His Majesty and drafted edicts, how could you make a great contribution and become an earl?" As the saying goes, the rank shows its merit and the position shows its ability. Even if Bai Shan is promoted, he should be promoted to an official position to show his ability. Only those who have merit and great merit can be named an earl. Bai Shan said, "I went to the battlefield several times, and the last time I gave a warning in time, I saved General Qi Bai and 2,000 soldiers, so His Majesty only sealed me." Madame Lu looked him up and down suspiciously, "Really?" Bai Shan nodded solemnly, "It really can't be real anymore, grandmother doesn't believe it and asks for luck." Mrs. Lu glanced at Daji and didn't ask him. The child has grown up, so it's not good for her to ask too much. Mrs. Lu looked at the imperial decree of the 2 people's reward, and finally became happy. She raised her lips and asked, "This is a big happy event, do you want to entertain guests?" Bai Shan and Man Bao looked at each other, shook their heads and refused. "This time, His Majesty has awarded a lot of people, we are just a small plus, if we also entertain guests, we don't know when we will be lined up, why don't we invite a few close ones to eat? Just a meal." Mrs. Lu thought about it and felt that it would be better to be low-key. This time, their family has sealed too, and whether it is Man Bao or Bai Shan, the foundation is still shallow, but the two are too young, if they have another banquet, they will inevitably attract attention. In fact, even if there were no guests, Bai Shan and Zhou Man still attracted the attention of many people. Bai Shan will not say anything about it, but he was highly praised by the emperor on this trip, believing that his experience is more important than the whole of Liaodong. Next is Zhou Man. She entered the officialdom as a woman without any foundation. Up to now, she not only has an official position to show her ability, but also a title to show her merit. It is impossible not to be shocked. Some families with unworthy descendants, but unfortunately one or two smart daughters and granddaughters couldn't hold back their excitement. If their daughters, granddaughters, can also serve as officials, and serve as arms to each other with their father and brother in the family, isn't this also an act of honoring their ancestors? Just thinking deeply, everyone can't help but regret that Zhou Man's road to success is difficult to replicate. Based on medical skills, she entered the imperial hospital, because she wanted to write medical books and facilitate the treatment of the prince and the prince, so she entered the Chongguan Museum. If other women want to go her way, they must go to the Imperial Medical Office and start studying medicine like her. The only female officials that the DPRK and China can accept are the Imperial Hospital and the Imperial Medical Office, and other departments will obviously not accept it. Even Kong Wengan would find it difficult to accept a second female official. And let the bright girls in their family study medicine. These adults are not very willing. Physicians are craftsmen. Although the status of the Imperial Physician's Office has now arisen, in the eyes of everyone, physicians are still craftsmen who serve people. Everyone also thought about it in their hearts, and after tangled, they suppressed this idea. But young girls have their own ideas, and many girls get together to make a big event at the palace banquet. The emperor will hold a celebration banquet in the palace just 2 days after the award. Man Bao and Bai Shan were on the list this time, and they could bring their families in, so Man Bao brought Qian Shi and Zhou Liru, while Bai Shan brought his grandmother and mother. Originally, he didn't want to take Mrs. Lu with him. The palace banquet was very cumbersome, with all kinds of greetings. Although it was honorable, it was also very tiring. He didn't want Mrs. Lu to suffer this crime. But Mrs. Lu felt that if Bai Shan was released, the capital would have to leave his family to take care of them. Man Bao is impossible, and Zheng's skin is thin, so she can only go on, so Mrs. Lu wanted to go to the palace this time to meet people, make an impression first, and find someone to talk about later. So the family of 6 went out together. Bai Erlang and Princess Mingda were waiting for them at the gate of the palace, and they all entered the palace together. Originally, with Zhou Man present, the palace servants were considerate enough. Coupled with Princess Mingda, everyone respected Mrs. Lu and the Qian family even more, and directly carried the people to the palace where the banquet was held. Both Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Qian were a little uneasy, and the chamberlain who led them explained softly, "Your Majesty and the lady are considerate, it is not easy to let the old ladies and gentlemen go such a long way, so I specially let them go. The servants are waiting at the palace gate to carry the chariot." Mrs. Zhao Qiagong and others also entered the palace in a chariot, not just Mrs. Lu and Qian. The two of them were relieved. This was Qian's first time entering the palace, and she was a little flustered when she was helped by Man Bao to get off the chariot, but her hand held Man Bao's little hand, which was warm and calm, and her heart was calmed down. She raised her head and glanced at the door of the palace, and quietly exhaled. The door looked quite tall and large, and it was much more imposing than their home, as expected of the palace. However, because the Zhou residence she lives in is not bad, although the grandeur of the Tai Chi palace shocked her, she still stabilized. Man Bao helped Qian into the hall, turned a door, and there was a big yard. Because it was winter, there weren't too many flowers at the moment, but the gardeners of the palace were still able to put out a lot of potted flowers. It looks especially beautiful in the cold winter. There are also red plums that opened in advance, and the red and bright branches are stacked together, which is really beautiful. Turning around the courtyard and going up the long corridor, the second courtyard is the main hall, where the banquet was held. At this time, many officials and family members were already here. The two of them just came in, and everyone's eyes couldn't help but look at them. A few young ladies' eyes lit up, and they stepped forward gracefully, bowed at Zhou Man, raised their eyes slightly and smiled. "Meet Master Zhou, little Queen 9. Mother, my aunt, and the adults are friends in the boudoir. See you tomorrow." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2782. After listening for a while, Man Bao understood that she was talking about Madame Tang, and was about to say hello with a smile, when another little girl on the side said, "Little girl Aunt Zhang, my father is the servant of the Ministry of Rites who is on the expedition with Lord Zhou this time." The little girl Liang Erniang, her father is the Shaoqing of Honglu Temple. My grandfather is Zhao Qiagong. The crowd fell silent. Man Bao also quieted down and looked at them in confusion. "Little ladies, this is..." Aunt Zhao pursed her lips and smiled. The 12-year-old girl pretended to be mature and generous and saluted, raised her eyes and looked at Zhou Man in admiration. "I heard that Master Zhou is very knowledgeable, but I was not in the capital before. I wonder if I have the opportunity to ask Master Zhou this time." Man Bao asked, "What do you want to ask?" "I want to ask for advice on everything," Aunt Zhao said. "I can't finish talking in a while. Why don't I come to visit another day?" "Sir Zhou, what time do you think is suitable?" Wang Juniang couldn't help but whispered, "I'll go too." As soon as she started, the others immediately followed. "I want to go too." Man Bao. Madame Lu was stunned for a moment and then smiled with Man Bao. "The plum blossoms in the garden are about to bloom. Why don't you find some time to invite the children to come and enjoy the plums in the garden?" Man Bao nodded shyly. Bai Shan glanced at Aunt Zhao and the others, turned his head and said to Man Bao, "Aunt Chang next to the Empress is here." Man Bao looked up and looked left and right, and saw Aunt Chang greeted her with a smile on her face, bowed her knees with Zhou Man and the others, and said, "My lady heard that the madam and the county lord are coming to the palace, and the special servants came over to invite the madam and the prince. Your Majesty, the two of you please." Many wives and little ladies turned their heads and looked over, and the adults who were gathered on the other side to talk also looked over. It is a very honorable thing to be received by the queen at such a banquet. Generally speaking, only some noble wives and old wives of aristocratic families can have this honor. In addition, they are people who are highly valued by the emperor. The queen specially summoned their wives and mothers to show their respect. Man Bao and Bai Shan immediately supported Qian and Mrs. Lu to the apse. Bai Shan didn't go in, but handed Mrs. Lu to Man Bao, nodded with her, stayed where he was with his mother and Zhou Liru, and watched the three of them enter the hall. This is the advantage of women being officials. They can accompany their families to meet the queen. Zheng Shi entered the palace for the first time, and the familiar mother-in-law was not there at this time, so she could not help clenching the handkerchief in her hand anxiously. Seeing it, Bai Shan stretched out his hand to hold her hand and smiled. "Don't worry, mother, grandma and the others will come out soon." Zheng Shi nodded. Zhou Liru had entered the palace once, and the young man was very daring. Seeing Mrs. Zheng's worried expression, she stepped forward and hugged her arm and said, "Grandma Zheng, let's go see the flower room of the palace later." The reason why there are flowers in winter is because they have green houses. They are much more powerful than our green houses. Zheng Shi smiled and said, how can the small flower house in our house be compared with the imperial palace? Seeing his mother relax, Bai Shan couldn't help but smile. Man Bao brought Qian and Mrs. Lu inside, and saluted the queen together. There were a dozen or so old ladies and wives sitting in the apse, sitting on both sides, with a dozen or so younger girls or ladies standing behind them, which didn't seem crowded. The queen immediately raised her hand to get them up, pointed to the next position and said, it's the first time I've seen the madam and the county lord. Lord Zhou, quickly help your grandmother and mother to come and sit, and let this palace talk to them. Man Bao helped the two of them up and let Mrs. Lu sit on the top, Mrs. Jian sat on the bottom, and she stood behind them. The queen looked at her and said with a smile, it's rare to see Lord Zhou so quiet and gentle. Man Bao raised his head and smiled at the queen. Mrs. Lu smiled and said, she is still young, so she is inevitably naughty, thanks to His Majesty and Empress for being tolerant. The queen smiled and said, for such a smart and lovely person, even if Ben Gong and His Majesty do not want to tolerate it, they will not agree in their hearts. After he finished speaking, he looked at the Qian family, his face was slightly solemn, and he said solemnly, Dajin can have such talents as Lord Zhou, thanks to the upbringing of the county lord, both the Zhou family and the Bai family have taught their children very well, and His Majesty also said that Bai Shanit is the pillar of the country. Thank you Madam and the county lord. The queen bowed slightly, and Madame Lu was so frightened that she quickly got up and curtsied, and Qian followed her, Your Majesty, and Your Majesty praised it. It is a great honor for the two children to be appreciated by Your Majesty and Your Majesty. Qian Shi was more simple, and directly said to Man Bao, don't hurry up and thank Niang Niang. Man Bao came out and knelt down and bowed. The queen quickly asked Aunt Shang to support the person, and said with a smile, it can be seen that the county lord has taught well. Seeing this, the other life women were also happy to sell Zhou Man, and nodded in agreement. Qian Shi was praised by so many people, including the queen and so many noble ladies who had never met before. Her face was slightly red, but she said generously, this child was brought by her sister-in-law since she was a child, my body is it's not good, you can just talk to her. Then the old lady stared at her face, and asked after a while, I heard that Zhou Xianjun gave birth to 7 children. Yes, Qian said with a smile, when it came to the topic of having children, 6 sons, but unfortunately only 1 daughter. What a blessing, the old lady smiled, but I don't think the Xianjun's face is too bad. I don't know how to maintain it. Qian Shi was stunned for a moment and then said, this is all due to Man Bao's recuperation. If you eat more food and meat, your complexion will be better. Everyone is envied, they are not short of food and clothing, but as long as they have children, there are all kinds of problems. It's okay to have 1 or 2, and if you have 3 or more, basically, the more problems you have, the more problems even the queen will have. Not spared. An old lady couldn't help but ask, have all 7 children been supported? Yes. Everyone was even more amazed. They had long heard that Zhou Man's family was Ding Xing Wang, and the adoptive parents who raised her were her eldest uncle and aunt, who gave birth to her many cousins. The business is all managed by a few older brothers, and he has accumulated some foundations from no foundation. It can be called a model of mutual assistance and honorable ancestors. But Zhou Man has too many brothers going back and forth. Except for one of her eldest and 4th brothers, and the 5th and 6th brothers who are in charge of the restaurant, they have never seen anyone else, so they don't know if it is true or not. Only after hearing this did she realize that she really had 6 brothers. However, the object of everyone's admiration at the moment is not Zhou Man, but Jian. There was an old lady who couldn't help sitting up straight, leaning forward slightly, Zhou County, I don't know how your children are raised. To be honest, Lao Shen has been pregnant with 6 children and gave birth to 4 in his life, but only one son stopped. She took out the handkerchief to wipe her tears and said, "My son has given birth to a lot of children, but only 2 children were born, and now my grandson is about to get married. I always feel a little bit in my heart. I was worried, so I wanted to learn from Zhou Xianjun." When Qianxi's heart was raised, she couldn't help but look at Man Bao. Can she say what she said in the countryside? See you at 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2783. Man Bao nodded slightly at her, and Qian said cautiously, "The children are delicate, although I have had many children, but each child is different. I can't guarantee that my methods will work, but it is just raising children. The more you know, the more tips you will know." She said, "The child can't be hot or cold, you have to touch the back and palms from time to time. If the back is hot, put on clothes. If the palms are not warm enough, add clothes. Use boiled water, don't drink raw water, don't drink yin-yang water." These mothers also know the most basic knowledge of raising children, but at this time they are listening very seriously. Even the queen can't help but prick up her ears to listen. "I'm also extensive, so I don't know more," Qianxi said a little embarrassedly. "It's the ladies who are well bred, they should know better than me." That's not the case. I think that children who are raised extensively are healthier than children who are pampered. Yeah. Qianxi didn't think so. Just by looking at Man Bao, would she dare to raise her body extensively at home? Naturally, they need to be pampered, and they need to be raised very carefully in order to raise people well. When they discussed the topic of raising children, Man Bao stood behind and listened in a daze, feeling that they were more powerful than her as a doctor. The queen smiled and asked Zhou Man, "Your mother-in-law and your niece also came to the palace?" Man Bao returned to his senses, and he should be right now. The queen said that she would meet her mother-in-law and niece. So Man Bao happily went out and helped Zheng Shi into the hall. The queen looked at Zheng's. She had read countless people, and she believed that she had the ability to know people. Zheng's face was like a silver moon, and her eyes were kind. Just looking at it made people feel good, and at a glance, she knew that she was a very good-natured person. People. The queen couldn't help laughing. No wonder Mingda always said that Zhou Man was lucky, grew up in a good place, and married a good one, because both the former and the latter were appropriate. In this world, the best is not wealth and wealth, but just good. The queen beckoned to Mrs. Zheng, took her to look up and down, and said to Mrs. Lu, "Madam is very lucky, not only is the grandson's daughter-in-law married well, but also the daughter-in-law." Mrs. Lu also smiled when she heard the words, she should be smiling, and praised the Zheng family together with the queen. Zheng's face was all red, and he lowered his head slightly and stood aside, a little embarrassed. The women sitting below looked at Zheng's face, who was almost 40, but was still as charming and shy as a young woman in her 20s or 30s. They couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. His daughter-in-law can still be so carefree, which shows Mrs. Liu's means and kindness. The queen let go of Zheng's hand, looked at Zhou Liru again, and boasted, "This time on the Eastern expedition, you have made a lot of credit for following your sister-in-law, and now you have grown a lot." Zhou Liru bowed his head and thanked him. The queen said to Mrs. Lu, "Mrs. Tai is lucky to have a good grandson-in-law." Mrs. Lu Tai smiled and nodded again and again, "Yes, so the county lord teaches well, and the children in the family teach well, but it is cheap for me." Mrs. Jian and Mrs. Lu used this topic to integrate into everyone. By the time the wives went to the main hall, they had become the most basic friends with everyone. Some people even invited Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Jian to come as guests. The queen smiled and went to see the emperor after they left. She was going to appear with the emperor. The emperor was still working in the Taiji palace. He turned over the book in his hand and said to the prince, "The approval is good, I have just returned to Beijing, and these government affairs are still under your control for the time being. I will take a few days off." The prince did not refuse, and immediately responded. The emperor waved his hand and told the prince to retreat, "Go and prepare, the palace banquet is about to start." When the prince left, the emperor took out the 2 envelopes that were at the bottom and opened it. His face was slightly cold, and he asked Gu Zhong to move the brazier over. He threw the 2 seals into the brazier, and saw that they were all burned to ashes, then got up. "I have a will to let Bai Shan come to the palace tomorrow." Gu Zhong immediately bent down and nodded, "Yes." The emperor got up to change his clothes, and it happened that the empress was also dressing up. A smile appeared on his cold face, and he immediately rolled up his sleeves and stepped forward to put a hairpin on the empress. The queen looked at the emperor's face from the bronze mirror and asked, "Your Majesty's face looks bad, shouldn't you be happy today?" After the emperor put the hairpin in place, he smiled and said, "Who said that I am not happy? Now I have not only won Liaodong, but also won so many good officials and generals, and the prince can also be of great use. I am very happy." The queen raised her eyes and looked into the emperor's eyes from the bronze mirror. The couple looked at each other from a distance and smiled slightly. The emperor reached out and touched her hair gently and said, "Don't worry, Xiao Yuan is saying that your health will not be good after the winter. The crown prince is very good, but only a little bad will always make you worry." The empress said, "Your Majesty has wronged Dallin. It's not him that worries me, but you." She said, "My concubine heard that His Majesty went to the front line and was in danger more than once, and there was a problem with the logistics of the front line." The emperor patted her on the shoulder and stopped what she was about to say. "I know, this time it's not mine. Now that I'm back, I'll just accompany Zitong to take care of my body without doing anything." The queen said helplessly, "How can your Majesty let go of state affairs?" But she did not specifically refuse. The queen was very happy to be coaxed, and happily went to the palace banquet with the emperor. This palace banquet was a celebration banquet, and the protagonists were naturally the ministers who had made contributions on the battlefield of the Eastern expedition. Even Wei Ji and others became foils. But in addition to them, there is another person who was specially named and praised by the emperor, that is the prince. The emperor has been on a personal expedition for so long, and here in the capital, the prince is monitoring the country. In fact, this is not the first time the prince has been monitoring the country, but it must be such a long time. And it turns out, he's doing pretty well. The emperor was very satisfied, even Wei Ji and others were satisfied, so he did not express any objection to the emperor's praise. Everyone had a lively celebration feast, and it was not until Haishi that all the ministers left the palace one after another. It's almost time for Man Bao and the others to return home. Old Zhutu hadn't fallen asleep when he heard the movement and ran out to pull Qianxi and asked, "How is it? Are you all right? Is there a Majesty in the palace? Qian, your daughter enters the palace every day, why don't you ask her?" The old Zhutu said, "Man Bao is an official, and his vision is different from ours. If I ask her what's the use, I will naturally ask you." Qianxi smiled and said, "It's very good, the people in the palace are still kind, so just treat it like a noble person in the village, and it's enough to be respectful." Old Zhou Tiou was relieved, and helped her to go back. "Then I will do the same thing next time I see those adults." Qianxi nodded, "Man Bao and they are colleagues, you don't want to bend too much, we are not arrogant, that is not to embarrass Man Bao." Seeing them talking and leaving, Man Bao scratched his head, no one cared about her a word or two. See you at 11 o'clock. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2784. Bai Shan stretched out his hand to hold her, and said with a smile, "Let's go back to the house too." Man Bao went back holding hands with him. The two of them took a brief shower, and Man Bao lay on the bed and flipped through a calendar. Grandma said she would give you a replacement crown, what date would you choose? Bai Shan also lay beside her and looked at her. After flipping through several pages, he said, "I can't do it for a few days. Before I left the palace, Lord Gu sent someone to quietly tell me that tomorrow, His Majesty will draft a decree. I'm afraid there will be a major event." He paused and said, "And there are still some tales in the Liaodong affair that need to be dealt with. I'm afraid I won't be able to spare the time in this 20s, and neither will the people in the DPRK. It will be New Year's Eve." Bai Shan smiled and said, "Why don't we go with your birthday ceremony?" Man Bao, is it for my birthday, or for you? Moreover, Man Bao is over 19 years old this year, and she is not very grand. She eats longevity noodles in the morning, and her relatives and friends have a meal. After thinking about it, Bai Shan smiled and said, "How about the day before your birthday?" Man Bao glanced at him and asked, "Are you going to ask for leave?" Bai Shan nodded again and said, "Guanli has a holiday. Dajin is so humane, the coming of age ceremony is a great gift, so men and crowns, middle school students have school leave, officials in the DPRK have official leave, anyway, they have holidays, and they can be approved as soon as they apply." Thinking of the hard work over the past few months, Bai Shan couldn't help but jump for joy. "We've been bathing for a long time." He got closer, leaned halfway on top of her, and said in a low voice, "Don't you want to rest?" Man Bao was really moved and nodded again and again. Just a little worried, "Can I also ask for leave?" Bai Shan thought about it and said, "I'll invite you." So Bai Shan was always ready to ask for leave the next day. He thought that the emperor must have been happy recently, and maybe he would agree to it as soon as he was happy. Who knew that after he entered the palace early the next morning, the emperor called him to prepare an order, but it was the order of 2 consecutive demotions. Bai Shan carefully looked at the decree he just wrote down. One was the 5-rank attendant of the Hanlin Academy speaking about Gong Yan. Bai Shan recalled that, Gong Yan knew that he was still the Shangguan of his Shangguan when he was in the Hanlin Academy. He was directly delegated to the local government to be the magistrate. The other is the servant of the lower province, Mr. Ban Xinban. The 2 servants in the province under the door, the 3rd grade, the position is only under the Lord Wei, and he is already the humorous of the country, but he was directly demoted to Shangzhou as his Hu. Bai Shan watched quietly, intuition that this was not because of the logistics and fodder problems in the East. They all knew that in the Battle of the East, the logistics problems were mainly local. Some places habitually cover the sky with one hand, intercepting passing food and herbal materials, which results in the delay of food, grass, and herbal medicines reaching the front line. On the way back to the court, the emperor had ordered Zhao Qiagong to bring these local officials with him. At this time, many people were locked up in prison, and there was no time to investigate. The emperor would not be in such a hurry to deal with them. Moreover, these 2 wills do not have a specific reason for their demotion, but that they have sinister intentions, tend to be inflamed, and disregard the stability of the country for their own selfish interests. If it weren't for Bai Shan's participation in the Battle of Liaodong throughout the entire process, he would almost suspect that the 2 adults secretly colluded with Goguryeo to betray Dajin. But if you think about it carefully, it feels very impossible, as long as they plan what? Unless they want to make money, Goguryeo will be able to come up with money to buy them. Bai Shan thought of this and his heart moved, but he honestly drew up the decree, and then sent the imperial decree to the province for review. Bai Shan stopped in the province below the door, bypassed the nearest office, and personally delivered a stack of official documents to Wei Zhi's office. There were a lot of official documents piled up on Wei Zhi's desk, and when he saw the official documents in Bai Shan's hands, he couldn't help frowning. Why did Bai Shiren come to deliver the official documents in person? Bai Shandao, there are several important official documents that need to be reviewed by Master Wei in person. Hearing that, Wei Ji put down his pen and reached out to take it. Generally speaking, most of it is a secret order, escorted by a special person from the Zhongsha province, and a special person from the Xiamen province will review it, and then send it down by a special person. When he came, Bai Shanduo took two official documents. Wei Ji swept them at a glance, and paused when he opened the last two imperial decrees. He frowned slightly. Your Majesty, what's the reason for this? Bai Shan, how did he know? Just because I didn't know, I sent it to find Wei Ji in person. Okay. Wei Ji pressed down the book, thought for a while, and said, Bai Shiren, go back. I know about this matter. I will make a review, and present it to your Majesty in person. Bai Shan said goodbye and left. Wei Ji thought for a while, but still brought the two imperial edicts to the emperor. The emperor knew that he would find him. To be honest, the emperor was slightly regretful. He shouldn't have burned the two envelopes so quickly, and should have kept them for Wei Ji to take a look. However, his face was not cowardly, and he said confidently, these two people are impure and unusable. Wei Ji, how many people who can enter the officialdom are pure-minded? Even people like Zhou Man and Bai Shan will still work hard for their own future and interests. How can it be considered pure? Not to mention Gong Hanlin, he was born as a Jinshi, and he has no knowledge or ability to say, otherwise he would not be admitted to the Hanlin Academy after being admitted to the Jinshi. Not to mention Ban Xian, he has a high position in the province, and he has to deal with a lot of government affairs every day. Wei Ji looked at the emperor quietly. The emperor looked at him silently, and finally waved his hand, and even Gu Zhong didn't let Gu Zhong leave. He and Wei Ji spoke alone. Before I returned to Taiyuan, I received two seals, saying that the crown prince was domineering in his supervision of the country, made a big deal, and had a close relationship with the guards of the Forbidden Army. The emperor said, the prince is suspected of dispatching troops to intercept me in Taiyuan. The emperor looked at Wei Ji and asked, the prince is in charge of the country, and Wei Qing is the prime minister. You should know how the prince is doing, right? Wei knew, His Royal Highness did not violate the rules. Even if he went to Taiyuan to pick up the car, he also discussed with the ministers and others. He paused and then said, Your Majesty has been on an expedition for many days, and you have old injuries on your body. Liaodong is bitterly cold. His Royal Highness is worried that you can't stand the cold weather and the old illness will recur, so he brought someone to Taiyuan to pick him up in advance. All agreed. The emperor nodded slightly. So, look, should they be demoted? Have your Majesty asked the two of them, did they really write the book? The emperor said, Jizi was passed on anonymously, but this matter was found out by Yin Li. Wei Ji stopped talking. There was no doubt about Yin Li's ability. If he found out, Wei Ji believed it by 5 points in his heart, but he still didn't believe that his own people would do such a thing, so he said, Your Majesty, I need to ask Master Ban in person. The emperor said, Go, I also want to know why he is. Wei Ji turned around with the imperial edict. Seizing the throne is a major event. Wei Ji has always prohibited officials from the Mengxia province from participating. Even when the Crown Prince and Prince Gong fought the most, the Mengxia province did not get involved in the dispute. Now that the Crown Prince has secured his position, why did Ban Xian do something like this? See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2785. Immediately after the celebration feast, the atmosphere in the court became strange. It was clearly the New Year's Day, and it was a happy time. As a result, the emperor first ordered to demote Gong Hanlin and Ban Chilang, and then ordered the imperial censor desk to strictly investigate the local government affairs and officials' behavior in the places where the grain and forage passed during the Eastern expedition. At the same time, the local officials brought back by their class teacher when they returned to the DPRK were examined one by one. Except for 2 who were deposed by local clansmen, the rest of the officials were either exiled or beheaded. 3 officials were directly imprisoned, and it was said that not only would they be convicted, but their families would also be implicated. The Thai hospital has not been very busy recently, and Man Bao spends more time in the Thai physician office leading the students to make summaries. This time, everyone has gained a lot in medical skills. Being immersed in academics, she will neglect some things. When she finds out that the atmosphere is not right, it is because of the big court meeting. Man Bao greeted people with a smile as usual, then sat in his seat and waited for the emperor to arrive. Master Tang glanced at her and sat on her left by the door. Man Bao felt that today's colleagues were unusually quiet. Although they were not noisy at ordinary times, they were not as solemn as they are today. When meeting early in the morning, always say hello and talk. Do you ever use breakfast food? What breakfast food do you use? How does it taste? But today, everyone was very silent. They just nodded when they met and sat quietly in their seats without even saying a word. Seeing this, Man Bao turned to look for Master Tang, lowered his voice and asked, "What's wrong? Master Tang, you don't know? The will of your family, Bai Shan, was written by your family Bai Shan." Man Bao, I don't know. After thinking about it, Master Tang said, "Yes, this matter is said to have something to do with your imperial physician's office, but it is not very related. If you say it doesn't matter, it has something to do with it. If you don't say it, your imperial physician's office can't change it." What? Man Bao was very curious, what the hell is going on? His Majesty has charged all the local officials who caused the delay of food and herbal materials in the war to the east. Man Bao said in a flat "Oh, I know about this, the class teacher was arrested when he returned to the DPRK, and we all know that this can't be done well, and many wounded soldiers died on the front line because they delayed the medicinal materials." Woolen cloth. Master Tang glanced at her and said, "But His Majesty's punishment for 3 of them was especially severe. Not only were they sentenced to beheading, but their homes were also raided. The Dali Temple and the Department of Punishment are currently hearing this case, and His Majesty meant to exile their families to Liaodong." The reason why Tang he knew so clearly was because he was seconded by the Ministry of Punishment to investigate the case. He knew more secret things, and these things could not be said, at least not in such a large audience. Man Bao looked at Master Tang, and waited at the palace gate to pick up Bai Shan after leaving the office in the afternoon. It was rare for Bai Shan to be picked up once, and he was flattered. "You are in the Imperial Hospital today, not in the Imperial Physician's office. I specially came to pick you up from the Imperial Physician's office." Bai Shan took her hand and smiled, "Shall we go out to eat today?" Man Bao wanted to go home to eat even more, so when he was full, he hid and whispered. But to Bai Shan's surprised look, she was a little reluctant to say anything, so she could only nod. "Okay, what do you want to eat?" "You can eat anything, just the 2 of them." Bai Shan took Man Bao's hand into the car and asked Daji to drive the car to the market first. They were not very hungry at this time, so they could find it slowly. Man Bao was in a hurry to know more about the inside story, but walking hand in hand with Bai Shan in the crowd, the anxiety disappeared, and he happily went shopping with him. The 2 walked around the street in official uniforms for a long time, and didn't go home until the sunset was about to go down. Both of them had eaten, and left food for them, but the 2 of them didn't eat, but walked back to their room. After washing up, the 2 of them both lay on the bed, and Man Bao asked him quietly. "Shuexiang Tang said that His Majesty's punishment is especially severe for a few people, why is this?" Bai Shan also lowered his voice and said, When the food, grass, and medicinal materials were delayed, Zhao Qiuagong got angry and cut down the logistics officials. His Majesty also ordered the local officials along the way. Some people were panicked and guilty, so they brought a lot of money to Beijing to find a backer. This is understandable. Man Bao is puzzled, so His Majesty thinks that they are embezzling and accepting bribes, so he is very angry. No, if it's just taking bribes, His Majesty won't harm the other's family. Even the criminal emperor who committed the embezzlement of grains and herbs only punished them, so how could they deliberately harm the other party? It's just that some people are extraordinarily daring. After realizing that they couldn't persuade His Majesty, they thought of other ways. Bai Shan's eyes were deep. Of course, there are many of them with their selfishness. Any solution? His Royal Highness led the Imperial Army and all the ministers to Taiyuan to meet His Majesty. Someone wrote a secret letter to His Majesty in advance, telling the prince to privately transfer the army to Taiyuan, probably to ambush His Majesty at the gate of Taiyuan City. Man Bao was startled when he heard it, and got up from the bed to look at him. You mean we almost got into a fight when we entered Taiyuan? Bai Shandao, if your Majesty has any more doubts about the prince, there may be a picture of father and son killing each other. There has never been such a thing in history. He said, isn't that what happened to Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty and Prince Rui in the past? Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty really wronged the prince, but why did the ministers give him the posthumous title Ru after his grandson ascended the throne? It's not because he didn't want to make excuses and self-examination after being wronged. As for Prince's previous temperament, if he was wronged, the emperor would still believe it. At that time, even if it can be found out that the prince was wronged later, the father and son have already destroyed each other, and it will be difficult to reunite if the mirror is broken. Man Bao thought about it carefully. His Majesty didn't respond at that time. Bai Shan raised his hand and tapped her on the forehead, saying, it would be worse if there was a reaction. We all followed His Majesty's left side at that time. Once there was a conflict, it would be our close officials who would suffer first. Man Bao was indignant. These people are so cruel. They not only want to cover up corrupt officials, but they also want to mess up the government. Bai Shan nodded in agreement. Not many people know about this matter. Gong Hanlin and Master Ban are now jointly tried by Dali Temple and the Ministry of Punishment. Apart from the chief officials of the two departments, Master Yin, Shuexiang Tang, and Master Wei know a little bit. Even Zhao Qiuagong and the others didn't show the wind. Man Bao immediately understood, I must not tell anyone. Bai Shan smiled at her, and the two of them whispered under the covers, this time it's not a small matter, and the DPRK may be turbulent for a while, so I plan to make the crown ceremony as simple as possible, and I don't need to invite many people to watch the ceremony. Man Bao, then what should I do if I ask for leave? I'll go and ask, I'll ask after I've been busy for a while. He took Man Bao's hand and placed it on his belly, and laughed softly. Don't look at His Majesty's anger now, I think he'll be happy after a while. See you at 8 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2786. After the emperor conquered Goguryeo, his prestige became even stronger. This time, the anger lasted for about half a month, and this time Wei Ji was also on the emperor's side, so no one refuted the emperor's decision. Therefore, after the last ban scene was also sentenced to be executed, the sullen breath in the emperor's chest finally dissipated. Seeing that he was in a good mood, Bai Shan immediately brought up the matter of asking for leave for Zhou Man as well as himself. As soon as the emperor heard that he was going to hold the crown ceremony, he remembered, you have already reached the crown. The coming of age ceremony is a heavy ceremony, and you really need to do it well. So with a stroke of a pen, he and Zhou Man were each given 5 days of vacation. Some ministers were dissatisfied and discussed in private, "It doesn't matter if Bai Shan and Guan have fakes, why should Zhou Man have them?" That's right, why does Zhou Man have a fake? Even if their positions are not small, not all of them like to go to work. Who doesn't like taking vacations when they can take vacations? The world, including the emperor, is the same in this matter. Man Bao received the holiday and happily went to report to Xiao Yuan. Xiao Yuan Zheng just shook his head and waved her away. The crown is a great gift, and even Mr. Zhuan couldn't help but ask, "Is the crown ready?" Bai Shan's heart moved, and he smiled, "I have prepared some, but I haven't decided yet." Mr. Zhuang said, "I also chose a jade crown for you, you can try it later." Bai Shan responded immediately, "Mr. Xie." There are many people who have given crowns to Bai Shan, even the emperor and the crown prince have each sent a crown, and the quality of the jade is very good. After reading it, Bai Shan put it away, and only took the sapphire from Mr. Zhuang and gave it to Daji. "Tell grandma, I want to wear this for the crown ceremony." Yes, Daji took over, "Master, this is the list drawn up by the old lady. Who else do you think needs to be added?" Bai Shan stretched out his hand to take it, because it was a supplementary birthday, and the DPRK had just been in turmoil. He didn't really want to do it big, so he tried to do it as simply as possible, but he didn't expect Mrs. Lu to invite a lot of people. Seeing Bai Shan's frown, Daji said, "The old lady said that this is the easiest. Not to mention the relatives and friends of the young master and the young lady, and people like Zhao Qiuagong can't help but invite them." He said, "In addition to being a member of Zongshu Shi, you are also a county magistrate. Among the titles, Duke Zhao is the most respected, so you naturally want to invite him. What's more, the two families are still a little bit relative." Of course, it was Zhao Qiuagong's business to come or not, but they had to do their best. And Zhao Qiuagong invited, and some other people had to be invited. Bai Shan sighed, "There are indeed many things for adults to consider. If you want him to say that there is such trouble, he can invite anyone he wants, and if he is not close, he will not invite him. But in the eyes of Mrs. Lu, who is observant, this is rude." The Bai family had already prepared to hold the crown ceremony, and with the help of the Zhou family, it was not difficult to do it, as soon as the post was posted. Bai Shan and Zhou Man still don't have to worry about anything, as long as they follow the instructions to try on the clothes and cooperate with Xiu Niang to change the clothes and so on. At home, even Thursday Lang was too busy, so he ran back and said to them, "I have reserved 2 deer, and I will roast venison to eat at that time." Man Bao asked curiously, "Who did you book with?" Thursday Lang smiled, "Zhao Lu Gongzi." Even Bai Shan was surprised, "How did you guys get together?" Thursday Lang said, "What do you mean by mixing together? Are we not allowed to have business dealings?" Since Thursday Lang came into contact with the heavy rain in the western regions from Zhou Man, he began to follow the line of the western regions, but he seldom traveled that far, and mostly agreed on a place and time with the heavy rain. He transported their goods, and Thursday Lang transported the local products of the Central Plains, and the two sides bartered. Although Zhao Liaolang has already gone to work and has an extra salary, the money is still not enough to spend, especially since his wife gave birth to a daughter for him. He feels that the money is not enough to spend. Therefore, Zhao Liaolang found Shirulang to cooperate, so that he could get some money. Thuro also likes to work with Zhao Liaolang. Zhao Liaolang, the dunk in the capital, basically knows him, and the big dunk outside the capital, Zhao Liaolang can also talk about it. The gems, pearls, spices, and swords that he got back made more money through Zhao Liaolang's hands than he did himself. Too much. Moreover, he found that Zhao Liaolang's name seemed to be more useful than that of Princess Changjiao. When someone called Princess Changjiao's name outside, some people might not buy it, but when they called Zhao Liaolang's name, most people didn't dare to act rashly. If it weren't for the fact that they had cooperated happily before, and Man Bao and Princess Changjia were friends again, he would want to change partners. It's just that Zhou Lejun has always expressed her opposition. In her words, you can't just look at the present, but also in 10, or even 20, or 30 years from now. She said, now that the Duke of Zhao is here, Zhao Liaolang is the young master of the Duke's mansion. In the future, when the Duke of Zhao is gone, if the Zhao family splits up, then he is just a bodyguard. But whether the princess is 10 or 20 years from now, 30 years from now, she will remain a princess. Thursday Lang thought it was reasonable, so he took Chang Yu to play with him all the time. Chang Yu didn't know that she was about to be kicked out of the car. She generously prepared gifts for Bai Shan and Zhou Man, and then went to eat their wedding wine in advance. That's right, Chang Yu was pregnant, and her belly was showing. Wei Yu helped her, and then avoided her and whispered to Bai Shan, help me ask Lord Zhou to take care of the princess. Bai Shan smiled, I see that Princess Changjia has 4 maids in the palace. Why, it's not enough to take care of her alone. Wei Yu smiled bitterly, how are they the same? He said, I don't know what's wrong. After she was pregnant, her taste became very strange. First, she said that the noodles with raw noodles tasted better, and then she liked to eat some stinky things. She kept saying that it was delicious. Now it is not to mention eating those strange things, but as soon as she smelled the wine, she was intoxicated and swallowed hard. If she hadn't known that alcohol was not good for the fetus and I was concerned about it, she would have eaten it. Bai Shan was stunned. Wei Yudao, in short, there are a lot of problems. Today you crown the ceremony, the wine used in the house must be good, and there are many people who use it. I'm afraid she can't help it, you also know that she has no resistance to what she eats. Will. Bai Shan. He could only respond, turned around to find Zhou Man, and told Wei Yu's words as they were. Hearing this, Man Bao's eyes lit up, and exclaimed, I actually have such symptoms. I read in some books that women have some strange reactions after pregnancy, but the common ones are sour drowsiness and vomiting, and it is rare to see other strange symptoms. The reaction, I didn't expect it to happen. Seeing her so excited, Bai Shan said helplessly, then why don't you go and have a look? Man Bao nodded again and again. Bai Shan said, remember to keep an eye on her, the princess is not as good as before, so she can't eat indiscriminately. See you at 10 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2787. Man Bao arranged Princess Changjia and Princess Mingda in the same room, and there was a brazier in the room, so it was still warm. As soon as Chang Yu entered the room, he sat on the couch. He kicked off his shoes and sat on the couch. He exhaled and said, it's so hard to conceive a baby. I knew I wouldn't conceive so quickly. The tea that Mingda had just drank almost spit out, and laughed until tears were about to come out, it's as if you can decide whether to conceive or not. Chang Yu said, I can't help it, doesn't Zhou Man have it? She raised her chin and gestured to Zhou Man, and asked, you've been married for a year, and you haven't been pregnant yet. Isn't there a way to avoid it? It's impossible to have a consummation by now, right? Man Bao blushed slightly, and said vaguely, you are already old, why don't you want children? Mingda also said, how many people want it and can't get it? There is some envy in the words. Chang Yu was stunned, looked at Mingda and then turned to Zhou Man. Man Bao whispered to Mingda, you are young, you can ask for it a year or two later. Mingda frowned slightly, Erlang said the same thing, but I always feel that it is very gratifying to have one's own blood. Chang Yu frowned, why, do you want to take a concubine for Bai Er? Mingda was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, I didn't mean it to where my sister went, and Erlang didn't mean it either. I just envy my sister for being a mother. Man Bao's face was tangled, but he couldn't hold back, didn't Bai tell you that he took contraceptive pills? Minda was stunned. Chang Yu also widened his eyes. Man Baidao, you are a little weaker and young. Pregnancy at this time is not good for your health. The medicated recipe I prescribed for you is to regulate your body. It is not suitable for pregnancy during this time, so he took contraceptives. Medicine, didn't he tell you? Mingda has a good memory. Of course, she remembered that at that time, they had just gotten married and it was not yet full moon. He rushed back to her and said, Man Bao is not suitable for pregnancy at this time, so Bai Shan took contraceptive pills. Mingda, let me eat it too, so that you can have children when you are older. He said, Man Bao said that a woman is pregnant when she is 20, and you can wait until you are 20 before getting pregnant. Mingda was moved by his thoughtfulness at the time, and responded with a smile. Mingda, he won't be taking medicine all the time, right? I didn't smell the medicine, and I never heard from the kitchen that he was taking medicine. Man Bao said vaguely, oh, those are pills, take one for a long time. Minda was speechless. Now it was Chang Yu's turn to look at her enviously, then she turned to look at Zhou Man. You said, did Bai Shan also take this kind of medicine? Man Bao didn't answer, but Chang Yu knew. She hummed, you have to give me some of this medicine. I will also give it to the concubine in the future. I heard that giving birth is painful, and I don't want to have any more in the future. After thinking about it, Man Bao said, I'll do more research. It seems that it is time to study the contraceptive pills, but definitely can't use the contraceptive pills bought from the mall as a reference, which uses a biological robot. Obviously, she can't do this, she can only use drugs to work. But the medicine is 3-point poisonous. How can the medicine be used to reduce the harm to the man and reduce the chance of the woman getting pregnant? Man Bao thought. Chang Yu was stunned, and Mingda was also startled. Is the medicine you gave them immature? Man Bao felt that the filling would be revealed when he sat down again, so he got up and slipped away. I'm going to greet other guests, you all sit first, tell the cakes if you need them, and let the cakes get them. Chang Yu and Mingda. The two watched her slip away and were speechless for a while. They went out to bring some food, and soon they brought a bunch of people, all of whom were familiar to them. Besides Zhao Lialang's wife and Madame Tang, there was also Lu Huan's cousin, who was the former princess of the two princesses. Boudoir friends. They were all invited by Man Bao to accompany them to talk, to divert their attention by the way. Chang Yu used his chopsticks to turn the dishes on the plate with little appetite, and put them down with a sigh, suddenly smelling a mellow fragrance. She shrugged her nose, her eyes getting brighter and brighter. Did you smell the fragrance? Mrs. Tang and the others smelled it, and then smiled. The princess doesn't even think about it, but you can smell it as soon as you say it. It seems to be the smell of barbecue. Just as he was talking, a servant brought a plate of hot venison and smiled. The ceremony has not yet begun. Our eldest lady is afraid that the princess and the ladies will be hungry, so let's bring some things to fill in stomach. It just so happened that the venison in the kitchen had just been roasted, and the servants brought it here. However, Chang Yu said, it's not this scent, you should take it farther away to block my scent. Descendant. She silently held the barbecue and backed away, and Chang Yu took a breath and said, yes, it's the smell, the aroma of the wine. What kind of wine do you use? Descendant. It was an old servant of the Bai family who came to deliver the barbecue. She followed the old lady to Mianzhou when she was 8 or 9 years old, and from Mianzhou to the capital. She naturally knew what kind of wine she was using, so she bowed and replied, our Mianzhou produces Shaku spring wine, which is very delicious. When our young master was 10 years old, the old lady kept a batch of Shaku spring wine in the cellar, saying that when the young master finished drinking the wine left by the master, he would use it. The wine that Bai Qi buried for Bai Shan, he drank almost the same when he was admitted to the Jinchi examination and when he got married. It just so happened that when Mr. Bai came to Beijing to attend their wedding, he also brought the Shaochun wine that Mrs. Liu had stored in the cellar a few years ago. This year happened to be the 10th year. The people below were also intoxicated by the smell of the wine, and exclaimed, "Good wine, it smells mellow, but the mouth is soft and not spicy at all." Chang Yu was already greedy. Hearing the people downstairs talking like this, he couldn't help swallowing and said, "I also want to sniff it." "Mingda, sister, you are pregnant." Chang Yu said aggrieved, "So I just smelled it and didn't drink it." Mingda couldn't say anything to refute, but she still said, "The smell also affects the fetus, why don't you ask Zhou Man if he can smell it?" Madame Tang suddenly said, "The auspicious time is coming, Bai Shan is going to do the crown salute, right?" When everyone heard this, they quickly got up and walked out the door, looking down, just as a steward came to invite them. "The auspicious time is coming, please move the guests to the ancestral hall." In the backyard of Zhou's house, a very spacious room was vacated as an ancestral hall. At this time, some tablets of the Bai and Zhou families were enshrined in it. Bai Shanzhen was kneeling in front of the ancestral hall with his hair covered, and Mr. Zhuang stood on the side as a guest. When the auspicious time arrived, he picked up the cloth crown to comb his hair and crowned his hair. Abandon ER's young characters, and let ER become Da Xiao Kao Wiki, and introduce ER Jingfu. Mr. Zhuang added a skin to it and blessed him. "The auspicious month is the day of the day, and it is Shen Erfu, respecting Wei Ei, Shush End. Longevity and longevity will be Hu Fu forever." When adding a rank to him, he blessed him, "It is the right of the year, and the order of the month." Xianjia takes it. To become a Jude, Huanglao has no borders, and it is celebrated by the sky. Bai Shan respectfully bowed to Mr. Zhuang, then bowed down to his father's tablet, and then turned to pay homage to Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Zheng who were standing beside them in dresses. "See you tomorrow."